Hello! Thank you for joining me here on this newsletter exclusive video content regarding singing high notes. We are here today, whatever today happens to be. We are here today to talk about the ways to sing high notes. And our first step in this path, on this path, I should say, is the terminology that I use to describe these things. Would it be easier if I used the generally accepted nomenclature of the break? No, I don't think it would be actually. My notes actually say that I'm supposed to say yes and then tell you why I don't. But actually, I don't think it would be easier to do that. Because, in fact, all that does is perpetuate further misconceptions about what and how our voices operate through these different pivot points that we have. Now, the bridging thing that some schools talk about, that's pretty cool. I can kind of get on board with that, but I would just rather cut to the chase and instead of introducing new terms, use the terms that have been used for decades and talk about this in a way that hopefully we can understand and then learn to treat these pivot locations, these registration events, registration pivot points, even if you like that, so that we get good, consistent tone quality throughout the various ranges of our voice. So this is video 1 of 5, and this is a little mini-series on high notes, terminology, chest voice. Chest voice. We've all heard of chest voice, or most of us have heard of chest voice. Voce di petto is what that's typically called. I don't usually use that term. Of all the terms that I do use, I don't use that one. But I will say thyroarytenoid dominant singing. Why do I say this? I say this because chest voice is not, strictly speaking, only one set of muscles. There is a small amount of action that is occurring, and so it pays to talk about it in terms of a thyroarytenoid dominant, not solely, but dominant. The thyroarytenoid muscles they're also called the vocalis muscles. They're right underneath the outer surface of the vocal fold. So when we talk, like when I'm talking to you right now, I am primarily using my thyroarytenoid musculature in order to adduct, and adduct is the word that we use for close, the vocal fold. Why don't I say vocal fold closure or vocal cord closure? To me, that suggests that they shut and remain shut. And that is not accurate because as air passes up, the vocal folds separate and close again. And so the phrase adduction, the word adduction, is to move towards the center line of the body. And that is why I use the term adduction. So, thyroarytenoid dominant singing, chest voice. Adduction, moving towards the center line of the body. That is synonymous with vocal cord closure. But there's a subtle different meaning to the word adduction as opposed to closure, and that's why I feel it's important to think of it that way. Head voice, cricothyroid dominant singing. This is because the posterior and anterior cricothyroid muscles elongate the vocal fold. So in some schools of thought, they talk about the vocal folds thinning. And that is in fact true as they elongate along that longitudinal axis. But the thing is that all works in conjunction with the thyroarytenoid dominant muscles. So it's not cricothyroid only, it's cricothyroid dominant. Ergo, the thyroarytenoid muscles are still doing something. It's just that the cricothyroids are doing just about as much when you are in the head voice range of your voice. Now, the head voice or cricothyroid dominant singing voice is in a different place for different fox or different vocal ranges. And we're not going to talk about that in the context of this series except to delineate the different areas of the voice and show you some of the pitfalls in the upcoming videos that I'm going to shoot. Now, cricothyroid dominant singing, thyroarytenoid dominant singing. In the middle you have the zona di passaggio. This is the area of transition. how we navigate that area will largely determine whether or not we get good sound above the secundo passaggio. The secundo passaggio is the point at which we are fully into cricothyroid dominant singing. The primo passaggio is the point on the bottom where we are entering the zona di passaggio. Now, that's all, lots of different Italian words and things like that. A graphic speaks for 1,000 Italian words and probably 10,000 English words. So let me show you this. Many of us start thinking about our voices in this way, where there's this single point of transition, and you're either in your chest voice or you're in your head voice. And the problem with this is that if you approach your singing that way, if you approach your registration event that way, it is unlikely that you will have taken the steps to prepare your voice and mitigated the differences within the zona di passaggio such that you will get a smooth transition into your upper register. In reality, our voices look a little bit more like this. This is a fairly reasonable representation, if you think about drawing with crayons and pencils, of what a male vocal might look like. Here you have the chest voice or thyroarytenoid dominant range of the voice, and there you have the head voice or cricothyroid dominant singing voice area of the voice. And that area that is multicolored is the zona di passaggio. It is that area that is crucial for getting good transitions into the upper register of the voice. And here we have a representation, again, drawn and colored by yours truly, of what it might be like to look at the female voice. Now you'll notice that what I had previously referred to as the zona di passaggio is much, much wider in this than in the male vocal chart. And that is because for particularly the soprano and mezzo-soprano fox, that area of the voice is quite a lot wider than the male vocal. And in fact, we have a different term for it. We call it the middle registers. So you have upper and lower middle registers in the voice. Altos have a little bit of this function, but not nearly as much. And their registration events, their registration pivot points are more similar to the way that you might look at a male vocal registration event, but there's still a bit more space in there, and as such, we still generally talk about the contralto voices as having a middle register too. So now we've got primo passaggio and secondo passaggio. Primo passaggio is the bottom of the registration pivot points, and it marks the beginning of the area of transition. The secondo passaggio marks the top end of the area of transition, beyond which we are said to be in our cricothyroid dominant singing voices or head voices. And this gets to another term that is frequently used called mixed voice. It gets used in a variety of different ways. And here, the mixed range is the area that has the two colors in it. Some schools of thought refer to the mixed range as extending into the head voice. I find this to be confusing because that would suggest that we're somehow blending cricothyroid and thyroarytenoid dominant singing, but it's already like that. The problem, of course, is that below the primo passaggio, this is true as well. So if we're going to refer to the cricothyroid dominant singing voice as mixed voice, then in truth, we ought to also be referring to the area below the primo passaggio for a little ways as mixed to a certain degree too. And so I don't use the term mixed voice. I use the term zona di passaggio. It is the point, or the area, I should say, where we are making the transition, facilitating a good, smooth pivot into our upper registers. This all relies quite heavily on vowel alignment. Vowel alignment is our way of talking about getting a smooth and consistent response from our voices. So if I'm here in a comfortable area of my voice, I can sing those vowels and get a very similar response, similar tone quality, good intonation, all that kind of stuff across all of those vowel sounds. The thing about vowel alignment is that it is dynamic. So as we move higher and we move into the zona de passaggio, our vowel alignment changes a little bit. We are said to modify the vowels in order to facilitate a smooth operation of our voice, a transition of balance between thyroarytenoid dominance and cricothyroid dominance, and ultimately a smooth transition over the secondo passaggio. Vowel alignment and the basics or fundamentals of singing is primarily what my AAA method is focused on. That's the free method on the website, which many of you probably signed up for the newsletter to get access to. That method focuses on generating good vowel alignment and also good subglottic air pressure. Also, I talk about it in terms of the word engagement. And those are the words that I use instead of the word support. Support is the generic term for the air compression that we use in order to sing. I find that to be used so much as to be meaningless now. Subglottic air pressure I like a lot more because that's really the active force on our voices. We generate air pressure below the epiglottis. That then facilitates the vocal fold being able to adduct efficiently and produce the pitches that we want with the tone qualities that we want. If the subglottic air pressure does not respond to where we are in our range, in other words, we're not cultivating good expansion and engagement so that it's a dynamic system, then we typically start to get more vocal fold engagement. We tend to strain. Registration events don't work as well as they could, and any number of other things, problems arise out of it. So that is a crash course in the terminology that I'll be using in this little mini-series, but quite honestly, you've probably come across throughout my channel and other stuff that I do. If you have questions or comments, please leave them in the comments or reach out on Twitter, and I will see you in video 2.